so let's get started. Let's go to the next screen here. All right, so how many of you have an Aquarius or Leo sun sign or rising sign? You know, even if you're watching this as a recording, you know, feel free to, you know, raise your hand as I'm talking, or say yes out loud, yes me, or no I don't, you know, just so you feel like you're kind of engaging and participating, because sometimes that's helpful when you're watching it as a recording, right? But for those of you who are here, feel free to write in the chat window to let me know. Okay, Mary Beth has both. She has the Leo rising and the Aquarius sun. Awesome. So you're in the right place today, that's for sure. And Andrea has the Leo sun. Excellent. And the ascendant and the north node. All right, you're in the right place too. Okay, great. Now, how many of you have planets, like, you know, personal planets or just any kind of planets, but don't include the asteroids yet? Let's just talk about planets, right? Because asteroids, there's so many of them. You know, then everybody has something, right? So we're just talking about the 10 major planets, right? You can maybe include Chiron, but because that's almost a planet. But other than that, don't include any of the other asteroids. So how many of you have planets or points, like an ascendant or a career point, right? The MC on the top of the chart, in fixed signs. Now, let me explain a little bit what fixed signs are for those of you who don't know yet what fixed signs are, right? So there is Taurus is a fixed sign, Leo is a fixed sign, Scorpio is a fixed sign, and Aquarius is a fixed sign. And the reason why I'm asking about fixed signs is because the fixed signs, they make squares to each other, right? So the aspect that they're creating with each other is a 90-degree aspect, a square. So they have a very special dynamic with each other, all these signs, all the fixed signs. And very often when we have planets that are in the same modality as an eclipse or as a full moon or a new moon or a particular aspect, then we will feel the intensity of that eclipse or that full moon or that aspect more strongly, right? Because a square creates a lot of shift, right? So whenever there's an internal shift that happens, of course, we tend to feel it more strongly than when there is a harmonious aspect where it's just kind of like flowing and easy peasy and, you know, everything's fine. We don't usually feel that as much, right? So when there's an internal shift that happens, we tend to feel it more strongly. So that's why I'm asking. So how many of you have any planets or points in the fixed signs? Okay. Linda Johnson here. Okay, wonderful. Thank you, Linda. Okay, Vicky has the moon in Scorpio. Ooh, hi, Scorpio fellow. Me too. Moon in Scorpio, 19 degrees. You have Venus in Aquarius at 21. Excellent. Okay, so you're also definitely going to be feeling some of these internal shifts as well, right? Very good, guys. Okay, and Andrea has the moon in Taurus and the sun in Leo. Yeah, so fixed signs. Again, yes, perfect. Okay, so let's take a look. Before I go into it, I just want to say thank you so much for your time, for all of you who are here today. I know this is early for me to be doing my forecasting forum, so thank you for making the time to join live. And for those of you who are here via the recording, thank you for taking the time to watch this 90-minute, maybe a little bit over 90-minute webinar, right? We'll see how we're doing today. And then I also want to say a tiny bit about myself for those of you who are here for the first time, because I think we have a bunch of newcomers, right? So feel free to raise your hand if you're new to this forum, so people kind of know that you're new. And for those of you who are new, I just want to say I'm originally from Austria, from Vienna. I was born there. Hi, Vicky. I was raised in Vienna. I lived there until I was about 18 years old, and then I started traveling and moving around and ended up in New York when I was 21. And I've been in the United States since then. So I've been in the United States for for about 20, almost 25 years. And so I love being here, and it's been a real journey for me, you know, with my business, with my astrology. You know, I never dreamed 25 years ago that I would end up doing this. So, because it's always been a huge hobby of mine, but I never thought I would make it into a business. So since 2010, it's become a business of mine, or a vocation, you could say, right? That I've been doing it. I've been doing it full time now for the past 4 years. And it's been a really, really wonderful thing. I really love it. And I also have added coaching sessions to my astrology readings as well. And I love the coaching as well, just because it's extra support for people in between readings. And for those of you who are Superstar members, you already know that, right? And so for those of you who are new to Superstar membership, please feel free to, always make sure you schedule your coaching sessions on a monthly basis, because that's included, right? And in general, if you are a Superstar member, always watch out for those emails that say membership bonuses. Very, very important. You always want to open those. You always want to click on those, because that helps you to get all the great membership bonus stuff. Okay. Now, that's it. If there's anything else you guys want to know about me personally, feel free to ask. I'm an open book. I'm happy to answer any questions. And then as far as the agenda for the webinar goes, we will be talking, of course, about the 2 eclipses, the one that we just had last week, the lunar eclipse in Aquarius, that was exact on July 27th. And then we'll also talk about the solar eclipse in Leo, which will be exact on August 11th. So this summer has been a pretty intense summer in terms of eclipse energy, right? Because these are the last 2 of 3 eclipses that we've already experienced. So eclipse season was particularly long this time around, because we had 3 instead of 2. So it started already July 2nd, and it will last until August 26th. So pretty much most of the summer. So let me say a little bit about eclipse season, just because it's such a time for new stuff to come in, and for us to release certain things and upgrade certain things. It's a real wonderful time for us to really explore our own soul's journey and see how we can move to that next level of our soul's evolution. And we, of course, don't know what that's going to look like until we get there, right? So that's why eclipse season usually is very unpredictable, and it feels very uncertain, because we haven't gotten to the end of the upgrades yet, right? So it's basically a season of upgrading and exploring new parts of ourselves, and seeing how we're moving to that next level. And so that's why eclipse season can be a little bit intense sometimes, right? And of course, even more so when we have stuff that affects us personally, that's connected to our own birth charts, right? So what we're going to be looking at in this, let me just quickly see if anybody had a question. No, we're good. So what we're going to be doing in this webinar today is we will take a look and see what will shift in regards to our soul's journey with these eclipses, right? So that's something that's important. And for those of you who watch my videos, you probably already got a chance to watch the lunar eclipse video if you're a member on my site. And actually, even if you're not a member on my site, if you're joining this forecasting forum, you received the video link. So make sure you check the email and watch that lunar eclipse video if you haven't seen it yet. That's a fantastic video that really tells you a lot about what the eclipse is about. And then the next video for the solar eclipse will be recorded this week, so you will have it by the end of this week. Okay, for those of you who are, everybody will have that, because that's accessible to everyone. The solar eclipse video. Okay. What we're also going to be covering in this webinar is, where does 5 degrees of Aquarius Leo, that polarity, right, show up in our own birth chart? Because of course that's something we don't get from the videos, right? I can't really do that via video. So that's what the forums are for, so that we really hands-on look at our own birth charts and look to see, okay, where does that lunar eclipse land in my birth chart, right? And then also, do you have personal planets between 0 and 10 degrees and 13 and 24 degrees of the fixed signs, which is Aquarius, Leo, Taurus, and Scorpio. So that's another thing we want to take a look at, because that would be of interest to us, right? Because then that means the eclipse is somehow affecting these parts of our own chart, right? Now, then of course, the solar eclipse is in 18.5 degrees of Leo. That's coming up. So where does 18.5 degrees of Leo land in my birth chart, right? So again, we're going to take a look at that too. And then of course, what houses in our chart are most affected by the eclipses, which we'll determine through looking at all of that. Now, I won't be able to pull up people's birth charts during the forums, but if you do have a question for me, and I don't have your birth chart yet, feel free to just let me know what degree, what sign, what house, something's in, and then I'll do my best to kind of envision it in my mind's eye and give you the best answer that I can give you. All right. And for future, if you are planning on joining us more often, feel free to just email me your birth chart, like a PDF of your birth chart. Unless you are already a client of mine, then I already have your birth chart, right? So if we've done a reading together already once, or if you're a Superstar member, then I probably have your birth chart already. All right. So also, last thing I'm going to say is I'm going to be focusing on questions that are related to the eclipses, of course, just so we can keep it, focused on what we're focusing on today. All right, I hope that makes sense. So let's get started. So all of you have gotten an email from me with a bunch of handouts, and one of the handouts is this overview for 2018. Oops, I'm a year behind. We're already in 2018. And so what's awesome about this overview, of course, is that you can really see in quite great detail, what's coming up every single month, what you can kind of pay attention to energetically speaking. And if you are not so familiar with astrology that you know exactly what the planets and the signs are exactly and what all this means, then all of this will also be explained in great detail in my weekly forecasts, right? So that's what the weekly forecasts are for, to explain all of this. But what we're going to be using it for today is that we're going to be kind of looking at, okay, what's going on in, late July, early August, right? Because that's kind of what we're covering right now. So the lunar eclipse, of course, here, that was on July 27th, which is what we're talking about. And that happened right after Mercury went retrograde, right? So that was a big part of the lunar eclipse chart, is this Mercury retrograde, right? And then, of course, we still have Mercury retrograde in the solar eclipse chart as well, because Mercury doesn't go direct until August 19th. So both of these eclipses are kind of connected to the Mercury retrograde phase, which that's kind of big. That means, like retrograde phases, of course, we're going within, we're tapping into our that particular energy, which is, communication, mind, sharing, processing information. All of that gets accessed from the inside out on a much more intuitive level than it would be if it was direct. But we want to make sure that we also double check our facts. So whenever a planet is retrograde, it's an invitation to slow down, right? And of course, right now we have so many retrograde planets, right? We have Uranus is going to go retrograde right before the solar eclipse starts. So at that point, as soon as the solar eclipse, or as soon as Uranus goes retrograde, we'll have 7 out of 9 planets that can go retrograde will be retrograde. That's a lot, So that also means that there's a lot internal work that we're doing right now. We're really looking within right now, and we're really getting more aware of in what way are we needing to align ourselves with these energies internally so that they fit what's going on outside of us, so that we can kind of get more in, that we can kind of get a little bit more up to speed with, okay, is my inner actually in harmony with the outer? Right? So we're getting more aware of that, and we're getting a chance to really see, okay, what do I want for myself to have be in greater alignment with my own outside world, right? So not necessarily with the outside world in general, because obviously, you know, we can't always influence what goes on in the outside world, but your personal outside world, right? Like what it is that you do have control over, the things that you want to manifest in this world for yourself, right? So we're seeking currently to get in greater alignment internally with those external factors, right? So let's take a look at our charts, right? Because I think that's, of course, what we're all here for. So if you have your birth chart already in front of you, fantastic. If not, please feel free to grab it. If you have it on your computer or if you have it printed out, you know, just bring it in. These two birth charts are both my birth charts. They're just a different type of printout. This is from astro.com and this is from Time Passages. And both of those are great. It's just whatever you're more familiar, whatever, you know, resonates more with you, feel free to use what you use. I use this chart more often just because that's the program that I use. But I do like this chart as well. I think it has everything has pros and cons, right? So there is that, of course. And I always say, you know, life always has, you know, benefits and limitations, you know, most of the time for most things. So we just have to kind of take a look at like what's a good fit for ourselves, you know, what has the least limitations for us. So so basically, if we take a look at our own birth charts, what we're going to start out with is the lunar eclipse, right? Because that's just happened on Friday. So I want to start with that very briefly and then dive into the solar eclipse. How many of you actually, just raise your hand or type in the chat window, how many of you have watched the lunar eclipse video already? I just want to get a kind of a sense. Mary Beth has, Vicky has, very good. Great. So were there, so for those of you who have watched the lunar eclipse video, did you guys have any questions about what I shared in that video? You know, if you can remember a little bit, you know, what I talked about with the Mercury retrograde in Leo maybe, or the Uranus position, you know, because of course Uranus rules Aquarius. So of course that planet is really important for the lunar eclipse chart, right? So that means that, you know, not only do we want to know where does the lunar eclipse land in our birth chart, we also want to know where is Uranus in our own birth chart, and how is that affected by the lunar eclipse, and also the sun, of course, because the sun is the ruler of Leo, right? And then where is it by transit, right? I mean, the sun is easy by transit because it's part of the eclipse, but then where's Uranus by transit in our birth chart, right? And how is that impacting us? So those things are definitely things that with astrology, it's always about layers, right? So we're always looking at layers. So we're starting with one layer and then we're going to the next layer and then we're going to the next, right? So just so, especially if you're a beginner of astrology, you don't want to get overwhelmed. So take it one step at a time. Now, let me just pull up one last page here so that you guys can see what's going on here for the next forum, for those of you who want to join us. And thank you so much for hanging in there. I know we went over a little bit, so I appreciate you guys still being here with me. And yes, thanks for participating. Thanks for engaging with your own chart. Thank you for being curious about astrology. And I'm also really grateful that so many of you are just so open to exploring yourself and to really wanting to grow, wanting to evolve, and wanting to, you know, kind of make this world a better place just by being you and just by, you know, having an interest in, you know, knowing who you are. And that's huge, I think. And I think this is the reason why I am so passionate about astrology. And this is the reason why I love it so much and why I want to support other people with it. So thank you for being a part of that. Thanks for being a part of my online community. And I'm looking forward to reconnecting with you guys at the end of August, which is going to be soon this time. And so thank you for being here. Thank you so much.